Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Sutton. Welcome to my Introduction to GIS video series. Let's discuss the prime meridian, the line of 0 degrees of longitude that serves as the point from which all other longitudes are measured. It serves as the global reference point for geographic coordinates as well as for global timekeeping. You may be familiar with the Greenwich Meridian, which runs through the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, a district of London, England. Prior to the adoption of the Greenwich Meridian, early prime meridians were defined locally, with different regions using their own reference points. In the United States, for example, 5 different locations served as prime meridians at various times. They include the Old Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., used by the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey. It was the most widely used prime meridian for U.S. maps prior to adopting the Greenwich Meridian. The Philadelphia Observatory in Pennsylvania was used for early maps during the colonial and federal periods. New York City served as a prime meridian for early 19th century maps. Boston, Massachusetts was used in some early New England mapping. Beyond the United States, many other locations around the world served as prime meridians. Let's highlight a few notable examples. First is the Faro Meridian, which passed near the island of El Hierro in the Canary Islands. This prime meridian was used in European mapping through the Middle Ages. The Oradea Meridian, passing through the city of Oradea, Romania, played an important role during the Age of Exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries. Explorers like Columbus and Vespucci used the Oradea Meridian as their prime meridian. And finally, Greenwich, England. Throughout history, multiple prime meridians have passed through Greenwich, including the Bradley Meridian and the Erie Meridian, also known as the Erie Transit. Let's take a closer look at the Greenwich Meridian since you probably have some familiarity with it. The Greenwich Meridian we use today was defined by Sir George Airy, the British royal astronomer in the 1800s. He calculated what is known as the Erie Transit, which is what we now call the Greenwich Meridian. You may know the Greenwich Meridian as the internationally agreed upon prime meridian for mapping. But when did it actually become the prime meridian? In 1884, U.S. President Chester Arthur convened the International Meridian Conference to establish a single, universal prime meridian for international use in navigation, timekeeping, and mapping. At the time, more than 20 prime meridians were in use worldwide, and this lack of standardization created significant confusion in navigation, mapmaking, and timekeeping. At the conference, the participating countries adopted the Greenwich Meridian, the Erie Transit, as the prime meridian. So why was the Greenwich Meridian chosen? There were 3 main reasons. The first was historical precedence. The Royal Observatory had become the preeminent center for astronomical research and timekeeping, and its location had long been used for calculating longitude. The second was political support. The United States was a strong proponent of using the Greenwich Meridian, and the U.S. was the driving force behind creating an international standard. The third was practical adoption. 2/3 of global maritime charts were already using the Greenwich Meridian. It was effectively the de facto standard for international navigation. Here is something particularly interesting about the prime meridian: the IERS reference meridian, or IRM. The IRM is the 0 line of longitude used in GPS. IERS, the International Earth Rotation and Reference Systems Service, is the organization responsible for maintaining global time and reference frame standards. What makes this interesting is that the IRM is not located in the exact same position as the Greenwich Meridian. Here's why. The Greenwich Meridian was defined using astronomical observations aligning a telescope with what's called the local vertical, the direction of gravity. This approach was location-specific and influenced by local gravity anomalies, which caused slight deflections in vertical alignment. The IRM, on the other hand, is based on geocentric coordinates, which defines Earth's center of mass using GPS measurements, laser ranging, and Doppler radio positioning. Let's zoom to Greenwich, where we can see the Royal Observatory and the Greenwich Meridian. 102 meters to the east, shown by this cyan line, is the IERS reference meridian. This means if you take a GPS unit to the Royal Observatory and stand on the Greenwich Meridian, the longitude displayed on your GPS won't actually be 0. It will show your position relative to the IRM instead. In the next video, we will cover how to write latitude and longitude coordinates, because you will encounter various coordinate formats frequently in your GIS work.